Welcome back to the Daily Plus Live. There's our live look at Detroit. You can't tell. You can't tell. It's Detroit. It's pretty foggy out there. The fog is going to stick around a bit. But this is the time, my friends, as we look. I'm sure Ford Field is out there somewhere, the magic of it, where fans will be watching the game on Sunday. And the Kool-Aid, the Lions Kool-Aid Corner, is here right now. And this is something that we've had so much fun with because everyone is enjoying this historic Lions run and have been talking about it. I know if you're at work, everyone's got something to say about the Lions. We're all armchair quarterbacks at this point. So we decided to turn it into a show here on Local 4 Plus and clickondetroit.com. Leading the charge, of course, Derek Hutchinson, who writes all of our sports stuff for clickondetroit.com. And joining him, as always, Ken Haddad and Ben Bell. Gentlemen, I mean, the Kool-Aid Corner, you guys, you got a lot to talk about still, eh?
Yeah, I mean, you led into us with a pile of puppies, so that is a tough act to follow.
Don't you love the puppies?
Yeah, but we're going to give you the second best thing, and that's Bobby, Lions fan Bobby. So we're going to talk to Bobby again for the second week in a row, and then we're going to hear from Dan Campbell and look back at his introductory press conference. So, Bobby, do we have Bobby? Hey, Bobby, how are you doing?
Hey, Derek, how are you guys?
Good. Bobby is there at the Sterling Heights Parks and Rec. Everybody's wearing Lions gear today. Bobby, we saw your reaction last week when the Lions beat the Rams. What was it like this week when they beat the Bucs to move on to the NFC Championship?
I got to tell you, last week against the Rams, it was stressful because of Stafford. I explained that last week. This week, I went in very positive. I told you I thought we were 11-point favorites when I was down there, and I was confident all the way through. Even though the score was tied at halftime, and we came out in the second half and just blew them away. So that place was unbelievable. Ford Field was just lit.
Yeah, we actually talked about that last week with you, how incredible the atmosphere was against the Rams. And we weren't sure that they could come back up and do it without the Stafford angle and do it again. But it was actually louder at some point. Can you just describe what it was like in there?
Absolutely. I mean, your ears were ringing. It was so loud the entire game. I mean, everybody was so into it. We just knew what was next. It was just so great.
So I hear you're going to the watch party at Ford Field. Is it just that you just can't get enough of being inside Ford Field? You want to see it one last time? Or is it the atmosphere of being there with other people who care just as much as you do?
It's the atmosphere. I mean, I'm going to be there with my 30,000 closest friends. So actually we got a group of 10 going down. And if you're gonna watch them, and we can't be at the stadium in San Fran, this is the best way to do it, to be at the stadium in Detroit.
Last week you told us that you felt really good about the Lions because their offense could score at will. And this week after the win, we heard a bunch of players and coaches go out of their way to talk about the job that Aaron Glenn has done and how they appreciate the adjustments he's made on defense. How do you feel about the Lions defense going into San Francisco against the best team in the NFC?
I was really happy with the pressure on Sunday with the defensive line. I thought that we made some great strides in getting to the quarterback last week. We had some issues in secondary still with some long passes and some long drives that took place there, especially that one just before the half with Evans. But no, I feel pretty solid. Those two picks were so big, and that's what we need to focus on, is if that defense can get a couple turnovers in San Fran, I think our chances are very, very high.
We asked you if you thought that the Lions were true Super Bowl contenders. Like, could they really do it this year? And you were kind of, you were very realistic about it. You weren't sure. Did what you saw against Tampa Bay change your mind at all or give you any more confidence?
I got to tell you, the more this week builds on, as I said, this is my championship Wednesday. As this week builds on, I really feel like we got it. We're there. And I think you could bring on the Ravens, you could bring on the Chiefs. This team is built right now to take it the distance. I really am. I'm feeling more confident every day.
All right, I know we don't want any negative thoughts, so let's just say something happens, the Lions season ends this weekend, all right? How will you remember the 2023 Detroit Lions season?
I got to tell you, though, I'm going to remember the Detroit Lions season in this year as the best ride when it comes to the Lions that I've ever had. I mean, like I said, I was there in '92, but this is completely different. I'm grown now. I understand a little bit more. I'm never going to forget this ride. What they've done with the young rookies and the development of this team is significantly different. In '92, we did it with a lot of veterans, and we also did it with guys that were filling in for injuries. This here has been, you can see it building from year to year to year, knowing that this train's not going to stop anytime soon, that we're going to keep rolling along.
Yeah, I think we're right there with you. All right, what's your prediction for the game this weekend?
Okay, I'm going to go 28-24 Detroit.
All right. Now, before we let you go, we understand you guys have a little musical rendition planned for us.
Yes, we do, and I got to tell you, my cohort here right next to me, this is Mark, he was at the game with me on Sunday, and all week last week I told him, you're not getting in my car to go to the game until you learn that fight song. We got to represent properly. So, yes, the whole team here is ready to sing for you.
All right, let's hear it.
All right, here we go. Are ready on 3? 1, 2, 3. Forward down the field, a charging team that will not yield. And in the blue and silver wave, stand and cheer the brave. Rock, 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 go hard with the game. With honor you will keep your fame. Down the field we gain, all Lions victory. Go Lions!
Fantastic. Bobby, it is awesome to have you again. Thank you to you and all your coworkers for hanging out with us. Hopefully the Lions will win and we'll get to do it again next week.
Absolutely. Hey, Derek, we are all in right here. We are all in.
That's right. All right. All right. Tough to follow up Bobby, isn't it? But yeah, Bobby is awesome. She said 28-24. That's what she's thinking. 28-24 Lions. So
I like it.
We'll see. All right, we're going to get into some of the stuff that we heard from Dan Campbell today. He talked about, first of all, his quarterback and his ability to play on a stage like this.
I feel great about Goff. He's the least of my concerns. He's going to be just fine. For him, he's done this before. He understands it. We're back on the road, and it'll be a loud environment. But I mean, we've been in some big games on the road over the last year and a half, and he's performed well.
All right, Coach says Jared Goff is the least of my worries. What should be the most of his worries heading into San Francisco?
Oh man, that secondary and our defense probably, because San Fran, they're no joke on offense even without Debo. So you got to contain them, and Jared Goff has been so steady. I mean, he had his dip in the middle of the season, but he has just been steady as a rock. So I'm with him. He's the least of my worries.
Nick Bosa, Christian McCaffrey, Debo.
I think it's all Christian McCaffrey, man, because look, we know the offense probably going to find a way to get some points. They've done it in most games, but Christian McCaffrey is unlike any player I think they've seen all year. He can do everything. He does everything, and he's going to get his. Nobody stops Christian McCaffrey. You know what I mean? So how do you limit him at least?
The Lions are literally going from the worst rushing attack that they're facing to probably the best running back in the league, right? I mean, Christian McCaffrey is a guy that you have to contain, otherwise you have no chance.
No chance.
Fine, I'll be the one who says it. I'm a little worried about Jared Goff, a little bit. When you've got guys like Nick Bosa and Fred Warner who can pressure the quarterback, that's when Jared Goff is a little prone to making mistakes. So he's going on the road. I know he's familiar with San Francisco, but just a little worried.
Hey man, how would you be doing if Nick Bosa was chasing you?
I would do poorly, and that's what I would be concerned about.
Do we think
Cut Jared some slack.
Is McCaffrey going to be the first running back to eclipse 70 yards against the Lions?
Maybe. I don't know. He factors into the passing game so well too. If it's not working on the rush, they'll get him involved somewhere.
Yeah, I think there's no doubt he'll get to 70 yards, but like Ken said, the way that he gets there, maybe he doesn't officially get 70 rushing yards, but then again, he could get it on one play.
Because we've seen so many matchups come in where a team has had a really good rushing attack, and they've had a running back that's like Kyron Williams. Kyron was on a streak, didn't hit 70 yards. The Lions do their thing when it comes to stopping the run. So I wouldn't be surprised if we kind of keep McCaffrey in check.
Yeah, other than Baltimore, which is a special case because they've got Lamar Jackson. Every time the Lions have been matched up with strength on strength, great rushing attack against their run defense, they've come out on top and they've won that matchup. So San Francisco is going to try to be the first team to beat them. I would assume that they're going to try that. But you have to have faith in the Lions' run defense. Yeah. If things don't go well early, Dan Campbell talked about, and this is really interesting because I don't think that this applies to the 49ers at all, the way that the Lions have been able to deal with adversity in games.
There's going to be things that are going to happen in this game that it's going to look like it's out of control, and it's not going to go well for us. And as long as we just play the next play, it'll turn. And That's what we've done all year, and that's the most important thing to keep in mind. But you've got to be made a certain way, and the team has to be made a certain way to be able to handle that. Otherwise, you just crumble. So that's what gives me faith. We have a team that's built that way.
Last week, the 49ers had a very close game against the Packers, right? They had to come back to keep their season alive. But for this entire season, they've pretty much blown everybody out.
Yeah.
Right.
That has to be an advantage for the Lions if this is a close game, right?
Yeah, I mean, last week feels like such a weird game, right? Like they didn't play for like 2 or 3 weeks because they sat their starters. The Packers come in hot, really hot, and it's pouring rain the entire game, you know? I just feel like, you know, I hope the Lions don't get tricked by last game because it wasn't your traditional Niners game. And I think they're going to be ready to go.
I think a lot of people, not talking about the Lions, talking about fans, have been fooled by that game, thinking that the 49ers are a lot more vulnerable than they actually are.
Yeah, and I think one of the keys to the game, I want to see the Lions score first. They've been on a great streak of being the first team to score, and that's why they haven't trailed at all in the postseason. But that's one thing I'm looking for in this game. I want them to be the first. I don't care if it's a field goal. I want them to score first.
They've been taking the ball, too, on the coin toss, which is really interesting. Most teams don't do that anymore.
Yeah, the coin toss doesn't even matter because no matter who wins, the Lions are going to get the ball first.
Probably, right?
That's
true.
He started doing that against Denver, and you know, they didn't score the first drive against Denver, but they've been scoring first almost every single game since then. So why would he change it? I just think that the Lions have dealt with so many different types of in-game adversity, whether it's the Kansas City game where they were kind of on the ropes and Dan Campbell felt like he needed to fake a punt deep in his own territory to even stay alive, or the Chargers game where it was so back and forth. Every time they took a lead, they blew it right afterwards, and then they had to answer again. Or even like the Bears game where they were outplayed for 56 minutes and then just came back and won. So I think it gives you a little bit more confidence that the Lions, no matter what type of game they get in, as long as they're within shouting distance, they've shown that they can stay in there.
Yeah, I totally agree. They're, like Dan Campbell always says, man, they're built for this. They really are.
Yeah.
They're ready to go. They're going to be able to face whatever it may be.
And even the injury adversity that they're going to be with this week. I mean, they're not going to have Jonah Jackson. They're not going to have Brock Wright, but they dealt with so much of that earlier this season that they came through it and it didn't derail them.
We've gone from finding ways to lose to finding ways to win, and it's just a thing of beauty.
And they know perfectly. They know how to plug the right personnel in when there's injuries. They know how to move people around and put them in a position to succeed so well.
Next man up.
Really, next man up. It really works for them.
All right, this was kind of a big, unexpected story this week, but the Lions added Zach Ertz, and here's what Campbell said about his chance to play this weekend.
Now he just got here. I know he's in shape. I talked to him the other day. He understands we're just going to gauge this and see where we're at, you know. So he'll be out here. But he's played at a high level. There's things that he does well, and it's just a matter of, is this the week to use him?
All right, Zach Ertz is a big name, Super Bowl champion, 3-time Pro Bowler, but I think that this is more of a storyline than something that's actually going to affect the game, right?
Yeah, do we really even see him play? Is he just there as like an emergency backup, which I think is kind of more the role he's going to play? I mean, if you can get anything out of him, that's a huge plus. I mean, if he converts 1 3rd down, I mean, that's a huge win.
He'd be Brock Wright. Yeah,
exactly. That's all you need him, and that's all you need him to be.
Yeah. So Zach Ertz, I mean, he hasn't been a great player in years, right?
No, but I think they brought him in secretly as a Super Bowl consultant. Yeah. I mean, really, like nobody on the team is so young. There's really nobody on the team who has Super Bowl experience. You bring a guy in, why not? He may or may not play. Who really cares?
James Mitchell is on IR too, so like the Lions are really down to Laporta and Anthony Frisker.
Yeah, he might get some time, but I do think he'll bring a little bit of that like veteran, perspective thing that is really needed in a young locker room.
Yeah.
I hope he can pull a Joe Flacco and just go crazy.
Wow.
6 touchdowns.
Well, that is an optimistic approach. And we're talking to Ben Bell, who obviously will find optimism any way that he can. And Ben has come up with a couple of stats that lead him to believe that the Lions have a great chance this weekend.
I stumbled upon a little pattern yesterday in the Lions' schedule. The Lions have not lost a road game that was not a consecutive road trip. Meaning every time it was just a singular road game, they went out and won. And I think that guarantees a victory for Sunday because two home games and then we're going to our road game and they've done really well. Now the bad news comes in the back end of those back-to-back road trips where they were 0-3 on the back end of every single road trip. Even that Cowboys one with the asterisk down there with our little referee. Even that game was the second of a consecutive road trip. So,
But we can't decide if that counts, right? Does the
I
Super
don't know
Bowl
if that
count?
counts as in the Super Bowl. So that definitely means we're going to the Super Bowl, but according to this, we may lose in the Super Bowl. But Super Bowl has some odd things that might negate all these rules.
Neutral site,
Neutral
technically.
site. You have a bye week in between, so maybe the rules don't apply there, and it won't affect the Super Bowl.
Yeah, so Ben is saying that the Lions are bad on the second half of back-to-backs.
I would add another asterisk to your stat there. None of those teams were the San Francisco 49ers.
Well, the Ravens were, but
I mean, I guess, yeah. Well, that was a
yeah.
loss, so that
Yeah,
does not bode well. But
yeah.
that's fun. That's good digging right there. Good research.
Yeah.
Thanks for the optimism,
Doing
Ben.
the deep dive.
We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to the Kool-Aid Corner. Ben, I'm not sure if you were aware that Sunday's win was the 3-year anniversary of Dan Campbell's introductory press conference to the day.
To the day.
That infamous press conference where we were all so fired up and also maybe a little scared. But I went back through it and pulled 5 of my favorite quotes from Dan Campbell just to kind of see if we thought that he followed through on those promises. So the first one was him acknowledging the frustration that fans here have been through.
I get it. I don't blame you fans one bit. I get it, man. You've seen these. There's no telling how many of these press conferences you've seen. I'm not going to stand up here and give you coach speak, but I'm going to tell you this, man. This team is going to freaking take on your identity. All right. There's been enough hard times here, and you always found a way back up. And this team's going to freaking do the same thing. And every time we get hit, we're going to get back up stronger. That's what I do know. I'm going to put the right coordinators in place. I'm going to put the right staff together with those coordinators. All right. They're going to be the right mix, the right balance that complement who I am and know how to deliver the message.
Goatee looks a little fuller and a little darker than it does now, right after three years of coaching
hair was
the
nice
Lions.
and slicked back.
But I just remember watching that and being like, I don't know if this guy is going to come through, but thank you for saying that, because for so many years the Lions stunk, and they did this. They made the same mistakes over and over, and they hired the wrong people over and over, and they never acknowledged it. Wasn't that just so frustrating?
Know your audience. I mean, he knew the team he was taking over. He didn't just, take over sports team. He knew he was coming to the Detroit Lions. He knew what this fan base had been through, and he addressed it. He kept it real, and he connected with the fan base right away, and it was perfect.
Ken, there's like nothing worse than when something is happening to you, you've been wronged, and nobody will acknowledge it, right? It's just like...
That's the whole story of the Lions, right?
Yeah.
Like everything, just bring in a new coach, he does something weird, like you're like, okay, you don't really care. But I think Dan Campbell was so believable because he played here. And so when he said that stuff, we were like, oh yeah, he actually does know. Like he knows what it's like here. He actually has a genuine perception of
Exactly.
things. And yeah, man, it was awesome to hear that. I remember when we heard that the first time, it was just like, wow.
I remember
maybe this is real.
I remember when Matt Patricia tried to do that, and it didn't work at all. Yeah. So
Matt Patricia, Jim Schwartz, Jim Caldwell, those guys they came off as not when they talked to the fans, when they did these press conferences, it was like they were forced to do it. It was like pulling teeth.
Yeah.
And then Dan Campbell comes in, and it feels he addresses the elephant in the room right away, and it's like, wow, you actually are willing to acknowledge what's going on here. And I think that gave a little bit more faith that he might be able to fix it.
And that's what I mean by all the other coaches could have given their speech or their introductory conference in front of any other franchise. It would have been fine. But Dan Campbell's was specific to us. He was here for us, and
he also understands that building a team is not just inside the clubhouse. It's building a culture of fans that are invested in your team and a team that's invested in the city and the fans.
Absolutely.
And so his vision was way bigger than it usually is for a new head coach coming here.
3 years later, I think we can look back at that and say it wasn't just empty words, right? He came through.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't think I said this yesterday. I've never seen a team so invested and delivering for a city.
I agree.
Like this.
Yep. All right. Dan Campbell also talked about how he and Brad Holmes were finishing each other's sentences.
That was cute.
But the meat and potatoes of that quote was their
Ben
vision
and I do that
for
all the
players.
time.
He and I are tied to the hip. This guy, he's unbelievable now. You want to talk about vision? We see the game very much the same way. We see players very much the same way. And last night we were talking, we finished each other's sentences twice. One of them was about vision. But that, more importantly, we're not in the business of just stacking players. Let's find a vision for this guy, because when you find a vision for a guy, now you know how to play him, how to put him in your system. All right. But the guys that you don't, He could be the most athletic guy in the world. If you don't have a vision for him, what are you going to do with him?
When you're going back through these Dan Campbell quotes, you have to sift through all the weird stuff, right? Like he's talking, I'm envisioning, Dan and Brad like sitting somewhere having a beer, finishing each other's sentences or something. But what he really said was, Brad Holmes is someone that has a vision for players. When he brings somebody in here, he has a plan for them, and that's more important than just amassing athletes, right?
Yeah, it's exactly what we just talked about with the long-term vision of his previous statement, right? Yeah. It matches up perfectly. They're not just going to bring guys in here, because they did something good on another team or whatever. They want to have a plan for everybody that comes in and a full vision for their success. And we've seen that. I mean, like, how many times have we seen, teams make a big trade or bring in a free agent and we're like, oh man, like, why didn't we do that? Why didn't we get in on that? It's because that's not their plan. They have a
course,
thing. Yeah.
Right? I mean, look at how the Lions handled the running back situation this offseason, right? They lose both of their running backs. Well, they traded one, they let one walk. But the whole time, people are freaking out. But they had such an obvious, clear plan, and they were very intentional about it. Sign David Montgomery, trade back, get Jahmyr Gibbs, and look how it's worked out.
It's nice to have a GM who knows what he's doing, right? And these guys know football. And I think they had the advantage of when they came in, they could have such a clear vision because, the situation they walked into, it was basically an empty canvas. They didn't have to hang on to any players and be loyal to them. Like every coach that came in had to honor Stafford, and he was their quarterback. These guys got to come in on a blank canvas and just start from the ground up and build every little thing to their vision. And they've delivered.
9 players on the active roster still from that team, only 9. So they've overhauled over 80%.
That's more than I would have guessed, honestly.
Yeah, right? Well, they had guys like Decker, Ragnow, Jonah Jackson in, but that's still a huge roster overturn in 3 years.
Yeah. And it's nice to come in and identify some parts that you can keep and build around. And
absolutely.
The parts that they kept really worked.
Another time I want to talk about Brad Holmes' vision is like when the Lions made that Stafford trade, everybody said, we've talked about it a million times, everybody said, okay, they threw in Jared Goff because the Rams didn't really need him. Yeah. The Lions just needed somebody to get them to whoever they drafted number 7 this year. But Brad Holmes said at the time, we aren't treating Jared Goff like this, and we all thought, well, he has to say that, but it turns out he was right.
Shocked us all, right?
Yeah,
like, we really thought it was a stopgap measure, but again, they had that vision for him. They were going to rebuild him back up mentally, physically. Somehow it worked. I still can't believe it.
This is like a 99th percentile outcome for that situation.
It really is. Like, how in the world did this work?
Yeah. Even when he started, he couldn't throw further than 15 yards.
No.
And it was frustrating, but he had no one to throw it to. But
man,
what
remember
a way
that first year receiver room? I don't even remember. It was like brutal, man.
It was.
They were just bringing in like anyone on 1-year deals.
Yeah. Yeah. I think like Mohamed Sanu was on that team, right? Yeah. Even when the thing about Brad Holmes though that I really admire is even when one of the parts of his plan don't work, he knows how to pivot. Like, look at the J-Mo situation. He gave up a lot to a division rival to move up to draft J-Mo. And, he knew that J-Mo was injured, but he didn't know that he was going to be suspended for the first half of this year and that was basically going to derail his second season. Yeah. But the Lions have found ways to piece together a good receiving corps.
Yeah, and it's crazy how, we've talked about how J-Mo hasn't really been what we want him to be, but none of us are mad about it.
Yeah.
And, I think in previous years, we would have already filed him under bust, but, we're all, as a fan base, allowing this guy to give him the time to develop. And because we trust these coaches so much, and that's the biggest thing, developing players. That's something that's new to us.
And because Holmes has assembled a roster that doesn't require J-Mo to do more than he's capable of.
Yes.
They've also still identified J-Mo as the kind of guy they want to bring in. Like he's a great locker room guy. He's a great teammate by all accounts. He's positive. Like he's not like in the locker room like, I wish Goff threw the ball to me more. You know what I mean? Like
he's downfield blocking.
Yeah, he's blocking. I mean, like he's doing the things that we have come to expect from Campbell Holmes players, right? Yep. And he may not be putting up the offensive production we want him to yet, but hopefully he'll get there, but he's still doing all those good things.
Yeah. Ken, you mentioned this a little bit earlier, but here's what Campbell said on his team taking on the essence of the city of Detroit.
I'm going to be competitive every game. I can't sit up here and guarantee wins and losses, and I just can't do it. But I'll guarantee you this, man, these guys are going to fight, and they're going to scratch and claw, and they're going to be something this city's proud of because they're going to take on the identity of this city. All right, the ones that have to learn, man, it ain't always going to be roses up here. Everything's going to be, the way that that we all want it to be and look perfect, but I know this, man, we're going to fight, we're going to scratch, and we're going to claw, and I know the good teams find a way to get it done. And if somebody goes down, the next one steps up, and he's expected to produce enough to help those guys next to him win.
When you hear Campbell talk about a team taking on an identity of the city, what does that mean to you? Like, where does that manifest?
Blue collar. We just put our work boots on and we go to work. And sometimes you just do it without expectations. You go to work and you just trust the process and let everything else play out. And that's what the Lions have done, and it's worked perfectly, and it represents this city because that's what we do. We just go to work, and it's awesome.
Yeah.
It just turns the mission into something way bigger than football, right? Like, think of how many people you know right now that do not care about football, that are paying attention to this.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, my wife, for instance, like, she doesn't, like, she usually sits in the other room, right? Like, during a football game, she does not care. All of a sudden, I saw her watching a Dan Campbell speech on TikTok the other day. Like, she is she's invested. It's not just about football. It's like, she's like, wow, this is huge for the city of Detroit.
Yeah.
She has bought into that message that they're putting out. And I mean, if she's in, some people, it's got to be a lot of people.
It does feel bigger than football here. I mean, this is an event. This is a special event in history that's happening this year.
Yeah.
When I listened to this quote, the first thing I thought of is, you know how Detroit will beat another city in a sport? And then somebody will jump on social media from the other team and be like, well, you have to go back and live in Detroit still, or something like that, and then we all attack them,
Yeah.
It's like there's this idea that Detroit is, blight and graffiti, and that's it. And I think that there's this sense that the Lions are just a losing organization, and until Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes got here, that was true, but that's not anymore, right?
Yeah.
So that kind of embodies the Detroit versus everybody mentality.
Yeah.
I was going to say, can you call on me?
Yeah.
I mean,
Tap in
thanks,
here.
because I'm listening to you guys, because it is such a crap narrative, right? That, there's, it's Detroit, you're always losing, and, trying to struggle. When we've seen our city now, the way that the rest of the nation now can see it, even when they do those large overhead shots of the city and the lights, and people are like, oh, Detroit's not bad. It's like, yeah, we've been grinding our butts off here in the city. For the last 15 years more. I mean, people, and then to finally get, I think, the respect, and then Dan Campbell coming in like this, and you're right, Ken, I mean, I love your wife. We're probably like good friends, because while I like football and it has been a part of my household and the Lions, and that my husband did sports talk radio, I don't really get into it a lot, but there is something about this team. I know when my mom's talking about it, that we've officially reached over the, over the boundaries of just sports fans. But there is something about feeling really good about this, and really good about where we are in the city, and finally getting that respect and nod nationally. That has just been really cool and a great feeling. That's my 2 cents on the Kool-Aid corner right now.
Yeah, I think that's well put.
I think it has been such a huge morale boost for the people living here, because they really feel like this team, embodies them and is carrying on the message of Detroit, and not just we're trying to win a football game. Like, they are the city. They are Detroit. The entire city of Detroit is in San Francisco. You know what I mean? Like, playing the Niners. It's not just a football team. So it's just awesome to see. And you know what? The city deserves it more than any other city, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And sort of pinballing off of that, Dan Campbell had a vision for the Lions fan base the day he took the job, and I want you to listen to how closely he was to this.
I want them to know when they come into this city and they walk into Ford Field, man, this thing is, they're not going to be able to hear. We're going to play fast. We're going to play violent. We're going to attack. We're going to have attacking mentality. You're not going to know where it's coming from. We'll have multiple personnel groups, offensively, defensively. I know this is much more of a sub game than it ever used to be, particularly most offenses. But this will be something to where I feel like there's an attitude, there's a pride in where you live and where you play. And I love the fact we play in a dome, because it can get loud. We've been in the Superdome for 5 years, and I mean, when that place is going, you can't hear yourself think. And that's what you want. You want opponents to come in and say, you either want two things: them to say, man, this is going to be tough, and they're working on silent count all week, or they're like, man, this is exciting because the environment is electric, when you're one of those true competitors who's coming into play. But either way, it's the environment, man, that you're looking for.
That's literally what just happened. I mean, Baker Mayfield and Matt Stafford and everybody who came in was just like, wow, that was the greatest atmosphere I've ever played in.
That soundbite could have been from last week.
Exactly.
I mean, that's crazy. And it just shows this guy delivered on every promise. Sign him I want to see the first 30-year contract extension for a head coach.
All right.
This
sign
is a
him.
short-term league, Ben, all right?
Listen.
Ken, don't you think that the Lions fan base was like a secret weapon, right? And the Lions just couldn't unleash it because they couldn't get a home playoff game, and now here it is.
I know. Yeah, I mean, I think we've reached such a huge level now. It's gonna carry on for a while. We always said though here, man, just wait. We saw Tigers runs, we saw Red Wings runs, we saw Pistons runs. We always said oh, those are cool and all, but you just wait until the Lions are good. This city is going to blow up. And,
It's going to burn.
And here we are. We're right here, and you can feel it, and the other teams can feel it, and the whole league knows it now.
Yeah. All right, last clip. Dan Campbell had the audacity to talk about the Lions winning a division title.
It's no secret what we want to do here, right? I mean, look, if you're just talking about the standard of the division, I mean, you're talking about the Green Bay Packers right now. I mean, let's call it what it is. I mean, those guys they're finding ways to win. They've been successful. I think that kind of starts there because it's in the division, man. How do we get to where they're at? That's where we want to get, right? We want to be competing for the division championship every year. If we're not shooting for that, then what are we doing? And then once you become a division winner, right, now you're starting to talk about the next level, all right? And you can only take things one game at a time, one season at a time.
When he said that at his introductory press conference, it sounded kind of outrageous because the Lions had never won the NFC North in its history, but it took him just 3 years, and here we are.
It's like the whole press conference is just this weird movie with a bunch of foreshadowing that I just didn't believe.
They gave him some Just for Men gel, and he recorded it yesterday.
Because I've seen the movie before, so I was like, I know how this ends, but this was a different movie apparently. I don't know. It's crazy.
It really didn't even take him 3 years because last year the Lions didn't win the division, but they went 5-1 against their division opponents, right? He really put an emphasis on this, and they did it.
Yeah, and now we're to the point where moving forward, I'm going to expect division titles and playoff wins, and that sounds crazy coming out of my mouth.
Sounds dangerous.
That's the level he's risen this franchise to, and I'm just so grateful.
I just hope Hendon Hooker can handle the expectations.
Yeah.
All right, so you've heard all the clips. Ken, has Dan Campbell lived up to his promises?
Obviously, yes.
Ben?
Yes, and exceeded.
I think it's a clean sweep. Christy, I think we think that he's done his job.
Yeah, I know, but I don't want to sign him to a 30-year deal, Ben, because look, this is the deal. He's going to have the best career as a motivational speaker that you have ever seen in your entire life. He can forget head coaching after another 10 years, right, and just go on the road. I want him to come here to Local 4 and be like, guys, I'm going to give you the tools that you need to get the job done. I want him to walk around through the newsroom and just be like, how are we doing today?
It's not going to be easy. It wasn't a great 4 p.m., but you're going to be better at 5.
Going to be better again tomorrow, and then the next day, because that's what the fans deserve and expect. Oh my God, I think I'm feeling the Dan Campbell energy. Sorry, I didn't mean to take over the Kool-Aid corner here, but I kind of like what you're doing here, you guys. So it's good stuff. All right, I like the little sound effect. Ding. That was a good one. All right, thanks so much, guys. We'll continue with that. I mean, Sunday can't come here soon enough. Thanks for watching the Daily Plus Live. I'm Christy McDonald. I'll be your flight attendant through the rest of the week if you join us here at 12:30 right here on Local 4 Plus and click on Detroit.com. Ooh, home of the Super Bowl. I'm liking it. Stay with us.